Welcome to End of the Matter Ministries. Today we're talking about the last of the feast days that still needs to be fulfilled, Sukkot. So just a quick review. Feast of Trumpets, trumpet sound, God's coming back, people get ready. Ready your hearts, the Day of Atonement's coming, Judgment Day. Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. Day that decides whether you have been following God or not. It says on the Judgment Day, and if anyone's name was not written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. That's what happens to anyone who has finally made the choice, and that's the day. And after that day, it's too late. It's done. Sukkot is what happens to the believers after that day. I mean, we're talking things like the New Jerusalem, new heaven and earth. God comes down, doesn't even need a temple because God's giving the light to everyone, and God is there for everyone to see because we have been washed in the blood of Yeshua and made clean. And so it's celebrate time. I mean, you look in Leviticus chapter 23 and the other places in Deuteronomy where they talk about Sukkot, and they have different sacrifices and things like that, commemorating this time. But the main thing that you're supposed to do is be joyful and celebrate, because this is symbolic of God coming back, the dead raising, being with God. And it's time to be happy because it's heaven. The tears are sadness is turned to joy. This is the time. That's Sukkot. And so this feast day, the last 7 days, and then there's an 8th day, is the time when it's just to commemorate this. There's nothing unclean. There's the river of life. And it's just a time to remember that this is an actual time that's going to happen. Jesus is coming back. We become reunited with loved ones. And that day 8, it's kind of interesting because they have 7 days, which when you're looking through the Bible, that means completeness. Like on the 7th day, God rested, and that's our command for the Sabbath day. And the whole, that's all completion. Well, there's an 8th day that's also a Sabbath rest that's after Sukkot. And they have different things for it, different names for it. But what it really comes down to is after we're with God and there's a sense of completeness to biblical prophecy, to the promises of God being fulfilled during the Sukkot time, then there's the 8th day. It means forever. That, yes, we're here and it's completed and it's forever. And wow, it's just an incredible time. Now, this sermon's going to be relatively short compared to some of my other ones, I think, because what I want to do is cover, it's a tradition, and it's not something that's in the Bible other than we are going to be with our loved ones after, when Judgment Day comes, and then we're with God and with all that raised from the dead, those who followed God, we're going to be there together. And so there's this tradition, a Jewish tradition, they call it a Mourner's Kaddish, and there's different ways to pronounce it. So if you're like, no, you said that wrong, somebody who knows, well, there is more than one way to say it. So I guess deal with that, kind of like we say Jesus, Yeshua. There's different ways to say the name. Deal with it. If you're too tied into one, then you probably need to go back to the Day of Atonement and start seeking out some more things because you didn't resolve it there. All right? Anyway, so moving on, there's this tradition, and they have memorial candles. You light the candle, and as the candle's going, a Kaddish is a blessing. And so it's a mourner's blessing. And what is interesting about this blessing is that you're praising God. I mean, this is supposed to be the time, we're thinking about the time of Sukkot here, and this is symbolic of when you are going to see them again. And celebrating this is just flat out saying, look, this is an actual thing, and this is a foreshadow of what's to come. Let me read something from 2 Corinthians 5, 1 through 1 through 5. For we know that if the tent that is our earthly home is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. For in this tent we groan, longing to put on our heavenly dwelling, if indeed by putting it on we may not be found naked. For while we were still in this tent, we groan, being burdened, not that we would be unclothed, but that we would be further clothed, so that what is mortal may be swallowed up by life. He who has prepared us for this very thing is God, who has given us the Spirit as a guarantee. So we got this promise that this earthly tent, now that's what's cool about Sukkot, because it's about staying in a temporary dwelling or like a tent for those 7 days, symbolically saying our bodies here. Now, what had happened was when God was with Israel in the desert, he dwelled with them. And that's what foreshadowing of, eternity. So that's what we see when they start talking about, this tent, obviously referring to this saying here about God dwelling with us as in a tent. That's where that word is coming from. So what it is a mourner's blessing. And what happens is you just read through the different sections, and then when you hit the words, let's say, and say, then the congregation you're with would say, amen. So it'd say, and say, amen. And that's what you would say. And I'm going to go ahead and read through that just as something that we have started, just to give you some background on us. We started this tradition as we were looking when we had lost my son about 4 years ago. And one of the things that happened with us is that we were at a congregation that we were just visiting, and they did a mourner's Kaddish. And it wasn't the same as what I'm going to do with you today, but the idea was you're just acknowledging the people that have passed away, and you're going to see them again. And that just gave us such a special feeling that when we started going to, and the Jewish custom is to do it several times throughout the year. I think they even use fundraisers and stuff for it. But I was like, well, let's see, when is it the most, going to be a most spiritual, impact? And one of those times that we read it is during Sukkot, because that's the time you are going to see them again. That's what we're all looking forward to. Christ died on the cross so we could do this. And so we read it during that time. Another time that we read it is on the day that my son died, just as a reminder that we will see him again. And so that's what I'm going to go through with you today, is one of our traditions that we have. Not that you have to do it. Again, not that it's required that you do it. It's just something that we do during this time that reminds us of this season and what it's all about. So this is how it begins. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his steadfast love endures forever. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, whom he has redeemed from trouble and gathered in from the lands, from the east and from the west, from the north and from the south. And say, amen. Glorified and sanctified be God's great name throughout the world, which he has created according to his will. And say, amen. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people. And God himself will be with them as their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more. For the former things have passed away. May his great name be blessed forever and to all eternity. And say, amen. Blessed and praised, glorified and exalted, extolled and honored, adored and lauded be the name of the Holy One. Blessed be he beyond all the blessings and hymns, praises and consolations that are ever spoken in the world. And say, amen. May there be abundant peace from heaven and life for us, and for all the family of God, and with a repentant Israel. And say, amen. He who creates peace in his celestial heights, may he create peace for us and all the family of God, and with a repentant Israel. And say, Amen. And he said to me, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give from the spring of water of life without payment. The one who conquers will have his heritage, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. And say, Amen. Well, I hope this has blessed you. I hope you're going to enjoy Sukkot. The first day is a Sabbath, and that 8th day is a Sabbath. Kind of handy this year if you just want to try it out, because Friday night is already a Sabbath into Saturday, and the 8th day is again on Friday night, which is a Sabbath into Saturday. So if you want to try it out, look stuff up online, have some services planned, look up some Sabbath videos, just take some time out and enjoy about it and think about it, that He's going to wipe away our tears. Our sadness turns to joy. The burdens of this life are gone, and we are with God forever. And say, Amen.